Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Seeger, and I am the Director of Acquisitions and Investor Relations here at SNS Capital, joined today by Jared Sturm. Jared, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for putting together another great video. Happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, so the purpose of today's video, as you can see, is to highlight the communication standard that we have here at SNS for our investor relations. And we've received a lot of positive feedback for this. And we understand that as someone that's not invested in our deals, that it's probably hard to understand what that actually looks like. So the purpose of this video today is kind of pull back the curtain and give you a good overview of how we communicate. So, Jared, is there anything you want to highlight before we jump on in here, or are we
No,
good to go?
I think we're good.
All right, cool. Well, the first section that you see here is the intro call with SNS. And this is our first step in getting to know one another. In these calls, usually we're looking for synergy to make sure that we are a fit for one another. And with SNS operating on a longer term hold model, it's really important that we feel that we're a fit for one another. So these are really good calls for us just to talk, get to know one another, and we try to make these as valuable as possible for you in evaluating SNS. And typically, the way that these are set up is just reaching out to us through our website, to my email, steve at snscapitalgroup.com, or even LinkedIn. There's a lot of different ways you can connect with us and get this call set up. Jared, is there anything you want to highlight here about these calls and your experience with them?
Yeah, I think down there in your slide, it says the objective is to build rapport, answer questions, and assess a mutual fit. And I think that's an important component. But before I get into that, I guess to give an idea, it's about 30 minutes is usually what we do. And we typically are doing this before we have an investment to present to the investors. Not always, but that's the majority of the time. That's our preference because it really is a two-way street, as you mentioned. It said down here, assess mutual fit, and you said synergy. So it kind of is like, I think a lot of investors have told me it's different than what they've heard from other sponsors, where it's like the goal of the call is to convince them to invest, where we're looking to make sure that it's the correct partnership in both directions. And that's really the overall objective, because as soon as we get into those future steps where we're presenting a deal, the returns and the metric and the financial analysis kind of come to the forefront, and we lose the opportunity to get to know each other. So we'd like to spend 30 minutes or so just to understand that ultimately both parties want to partner with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you mentioned about deal presentation gives me an opportunity to flow into our second step here pretty well. We do not raise a fund. We raise in a deal by deal manner. So each new offering will share with you an offering memorandum, which will highlight every aspect of the investment. And we've got good feedback on this. It's a very comprehensive slide deck that's usually around 70 slides. I'm going to pull up a copy here of the most recent one that we worked on and just highlight a few slides that'll give you a rough overview of this investment. And I'm happy to share any of these documents with anyone that's interested in them. The first one I think is important to highlight is just the investment summary. And this slide gives it just really gives a snapshot of the big things in each deal. So whether you're looking at the actual metrics here, I think this is one of the first things that anyone's curious about is how much money am I going to make? And we highlight that here. In the investment snapshot, you can see what we're purchasing the property for, how much equity, how much we're raising for the renovation budget, what's our expense ratio going to be, how long we're holding the property. And then finally down here, there's an overview of the capital stack as well. I think this slide does a really good job of just giving a comprehensive overview of the investment as a whole. And then there's another slide I'd like to highlight as well, a little farther down in the presentation, which is the financial stress test. And I like this slide a lot. We get a lot of questions about this, whether or not we stress test our analysis. And this gives you a couple different examples of kind of best case and worst case scenarios for certain investments. And while with any investment that you're making, there is risk, I think this gives you a good overview of kind of where things could shake out one way or another. And Jared, with your experience with the offering memorandums here, are there maybe anything on these two slides that I shared that you want to highlight, or maybe on a different slide that you're thinking is top of mind?
Well, I think slides 42 and 43, both of this financial stress test, the feedback that I've received over the years is most sponsors don't put those in, which is surprising because we run lots of stress tests. We just give you kind of the most common ones that people come top of mind, like what if vacancy doesn't, go the way we want? What if rent projections don't go the way we want? What if the cap rate changes? So we help highlight kind of those negative outcomes and how they'll impact the returns. But maybe not specific to the question you just asked, but something that certainly I want to mention about the OM is there's a lot of redundancy in it, right? 70 pages is a lot of pages, but what we've learned over the years is there's different people approach these investments differently. So you might have a highly analytical person that spends a lot of time in the financial section, but we also have we have a whole section dedicated to the sub-market and the Cincinnati market, which if someone hasn't invested there, they might want to do a bit more research and due diligence on that section. There's also a lot about just the operations and the operators being the syndication sponsor behind the deal. Sometimes that's investors' main focus. So we want to make sure we're catering to those individuals. And so I think 70 pages is a lot, but it's really like 10, maybe 15 pages is where people really gravitate towards, depending on how they assess investments and what their existing understanding of each of those sections might be. So I think that's an important part is don't feel like 70 pages has to be fully digested because there's a lot of redundancy through those 70 pages.
Mm-hmm. And usually when we are presenting a new opportunity, we'll have investors get set up on our portal and they'll have the opportunity to review the offering memorandum and make a commitment on that portal. Usually the process to get your funds wired over is about 2 weeks. And our goal is to make this process as smooth and as simple as possible, giving you the time to evaluate what you're looking at here. Jared, before I jump to reporting, is there anything with the old presentation that we maybe missed?
I think just for those who haven't invested with us, just the reassurance that we use an investment management software. So you'd be able to log in, see the presentation, see all the documents, express your commitment all in that one platform, and then easily, track the wiring instructions and, the process of financing it and kind of getting verification when those funds are received. It's all in call it one-stop shop to make it just make it a smooth process, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to jump ahead now to our third section, which is reporting. This is another aspect of our investor relations that we get a lot of positive feedback on. And you're going to receive quarterly updates from us, which will be detailed and will highlight the investment as a whole. We'll highlight the actual returns versus the projections. We'll look into the debt. We also are now including a short 10 to 15 minute video with it's called Between the Lines, where we'll sit and actually talk about the assets performance over that quarter and highlight things that might not have been included within that report. I think this also gives me an opportunity to highlight our CFO, Coleman's expertise. Coleman holds his CPA, his graduate degree in accounting, and he also has experience working for another large real estate company doing their financial reporting. So he's very thorough on these reports, and I'm going to include an example here just to highlight what this might look like. And I'll also, I'm open to sending these to anyone. This is an actual investor report, which I redacted any personal information from. But I'll just scroll through this briefly and just point out a few things. So top here, you just get a good little summary of what that quarter looked like, along with your distributions. And then scrolling down into the actual report. This section is going to be more for the people who appreciate a narrative here, where we'll talk about high level what's going on with the asset, and then kind of moving down here, there is a balance sheet and a rent roll included, income statement as well, and I think that's going to be more geared towards the people that are that like spreadsheets and want to actually dig into the numbers. But we try to consolidate all that up above here to make it easy to understand. We highlight the actual returns versus what we projected. We also will give a brief overview of the debt on the investment as well. Jared, is there anything in these reports that you would like to highlight or point out that I may be missing?
Just like maybe highlighting that this is what they would be email as an investor. This is the document that gets emailed to them on a quarterly basis. I think you said it, but just clarifying that is they would receive this every single quarter for that period of time. So we're updating it once a quarter, and it's showing how the investment performed. And really, Coleman's taking the lead on translating all of those spreadsheets and that you see at the bottom and all the performance into a narrative that's understandable and digestible by someone who doesn't spend all day every day managing multifamily assets. So our investors have really appreciated his ability to translate it, but also be honest and upfront about what those numbers are telling us, right? So the content of the report is like, here's what went well, here's what did not go well, here's what we're doing about it. And I really think a lot of investors appreciate this section right here that you have Steve up, is like the 2024 year-end projections compared to the actuals. That's what we put in that original OM that you showed earlier. So it's what did we say to the investors before they invested the money, and how are we living up to that? It's not our 2024 budget that we've moved, throughout the life of the investment, but kind of what did we say before you gave us the money relative to how we're living up to that. And as you can see in this one, better than what we said, which is always good. But Coleman does a great job of putting these reports together, and then all of that can be found on that investment software, Appfolio, where people can log in and view all of these reports for as many quarters as the life of the investment has had.
Yeah, and this next section here, quarterly distributions, your point there about the software kind of flows nicely. We do use a platform called Appfolio for our investor portal, and our distributions come out quarterly. It'll be 30 days after the end of each calendar quarter. And I'm going to pull up a example here of what the portal actually looks like, so you can get an idea of, in the back end, what are you going to be able to see once you sign up. So I've taken an actual investor's portal here, and I've redacted all of their information, so you can see exactly what's behind the curtain here. But this is your dashboard page when you log on. As you can see, you can filter this to get a overall look at what all your investments are. 2025, there's less data so far, but you can filter it farther back. And there is a new offering here on this investors portal. And when there are new offerings, they'll be right here. This one was a recent investment that was only for investors that were in that Henrietta and South Terrace deal, because it's directly adjacent to that community, and we didn't feel it was practical to raise as a separate investment. But it's a good opportunity to point out what you'll see when we do have a new offering in there, and the actual steps to invest. As you see, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Once you log on to this portal, you'll enter all of your investing entity details, sign any of the necessary documents, and then you're going to wire the funds. I'm going to keep jumping along here. We'll get back to the tax form tab here in a second when we get to the K1 section. But on the documents page here, anything relating to any of your investments will all be right here. All of your reports, subscription agreement, anything related to these deals that you're in will be accessible. And then looking at transactions, this tab's nice because you can see exactly how much was being distributed to you throughout each quarter. And then jumping ahead, the contact us page is pretty straightforward. I'll keep moving to the last page, which is my profile. This page is nice because you can update where you actually want your money sent to, and you can get a good overview of everything that you're invested in. It's pretty straightforward. Our portal's pretty easy to work with, and I think pretty intuitive. But Jared, is there anything that you want to highlight here on this portal before I jump ahead?
Yeah, I think why it's important to say it's simple and intuitive is because our passive investors and our partners, they don't want to create another headache for themselves. A lot of times they have other things going on that are a better use of their time. And so we try to simplify it as easy as possible. And you highlighted it, but I'll condense it. It's as easy as logging on, and you can quickly see how are things going. And if you need to find something, it's very easy to filter all those documents, whether it be the tax documents or the reports, like it's all in a very accessible format to where it doesn't make alternative investments a giant headache relative to more standard investments. So we try to really simplify it because we know our investors are not looking to create a big burden for themselves being a passive investor.
Mhm. I'm going to move forward to the final step here, which is K1s. K1s, we send out our K1s before March 15th, always, and that's something that we're really proud of. This year, we actually sent them out in the middle of February. But if you're not familiar with a K1, it's very similar. Jared, is it similar? I mean, what would you say it's comparable to from a tax document?
I think what people would be familiar with would be like a W-2, right? Your employer gives you a W-2 at the end of the year to then hand off to your tax preparer or use yourself. So while we are not an employer, we are the sponsor of a syndication. So we prepare a K1 and it comes in a similar looking format to the W-2. And then we provide that to our investors so then they can go and hand it off to their tax preparer or use it themselves to prepare their taxes. So W-2, I think, is what you were thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah. And now here on the screen, I got pulled up the tax form page of the portal. And everything is accessible to you going back to when you started investing with us. Very easy to go and obtain these K1 forms from your portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is going to wrap up here my presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Steve, I got one more thing before you end it.
Yeah.
I think it's normal for us, but in the final two sections of your slide, we have reports being sent out 30 days following the calendar quarter and K1s being sent out before March 15th. And we're very punctual when it comes to that, right? Like clockwork, we're sending out our reports 30 days following the calendar quarter, and we never miss that. I think that's not the norm in our industry. Like they're more sporadic and kind of when they can get to them, when sponsors can get to them, they get to them. And I think just the reassurance that investors gain of our operations, that if we say it's 30 days following the calendar quarter, that's when they can expect not only their distribution, but the report. And that means a lot in building long-term trust and long-term partnership when you don't have to think, when is it coming, right? It's just, we know when it's coming and we stick to that. So I think it's a really important part to differentiate SNS that we step up to that.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned too, any of those documents that were included here today, I'm happy to share those. I have copies of everything, and we want to help you get as comfortable as possible with working with SNS and just investing in passive real estate opportunities as a whole. And our goal is really just to educate and give back as much as possible. So I appreciate you for taking the time here. Don't hesitate to reach out, like I mentioned, on LinkedIn or to my email, steve@snscapitalgroup.com. Jared, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this today. And I'm looking forward to getting this out to everyone.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, Steve.